after you bought the one in St. Pete, you decided that you're going to start co-hosting. What did your first property look like? How'd you target that?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. So it starts with the arbitrage property. I did the arbitrage property. I was paying a lot in rent. It was $47.50 a month in
Wow.
rent. So it was in that same neighborhood that I had bought those first two properties. Had a pool, so I had to put first month, last month security deposit, and then I furnished the property on Facebook Marketplace for like 12 grand. So maybe I'm into it about $30,000. And I went live in the summertime, and the ductwork needed to be replaced in Florida because it was getting up to 81 degrees in Florida in the summertime, which is way different than 80 degrees in Chicago because of the humidity down
Mm.
there. The owner didn't want to replace the ductwork, and so I'm having to refund guests for about 6 weeks until he finally replaced the ductwork, which was like $9,500. After going through this whole thing, I'm just like, all right, I don't want to do arbitrage anymore. Let's focus on the co-hosting thing. And remember, I had somebody who wanted to learn the process about how to do Airbnbs from me. So I said, hey, find a property, close the deal, and then I'll teach you how to do it, and we'll be partners on this. So he had a truck at that time, and he just put like a lot of random stuff on the back. Like he was a jack of all trades, and one thing he put was like Airbnb management. And somebody just ended up calling his truck, his phone number on his truck
Mm.
at a Walmart parking lot. And he goes, "Hey, man, I have these people that want us to manage their Airbnb. Will you do it with me?" And I was like, "I've been hearing about this co-hosting thing." I was just like, "Yeah, let's go meet them, see how it goes." Went there, and that was our first property. It was doing about $100,000 a year, as walking distance from the beach, 2-bedroom condo. So we were making somewhere around $1,800 a month, charging 20%. And then the light bulb kind of just went off because I'm just like, I have no risk. I'm just managing for somebody else what I already know how to do, and I can pretty much scale it to however much I want to. So that's how the first one came. And then when that light bulb went off, I was just like, all right, how do I get clients? So what I did originally is I would go to Facebook groups and try to message people that were like, I'm looking for an Airbnb co-host, but people ended up catching on, and there was like 30 different people that were just like, I'll be your co-host. And then one person be like, I'll do it for 5% instead of 20%. They go with that person. And then it was kind of crazy. So then I dug a little bit deeper, and I was like door knocking. So I was going to agents' doors in West Palm Beach. I had a pamphlet, go knock on their doors, introduce myself, say, hey, look, I run this Airbnb management company. I'm here in town. Happy to run your analysis for your clients. And then if you refer clients to me in the future, I'll pay you $1,000 referral fee. So trying to add value on the front end by running their numbers, and adding value on the back end by giving them a referral fee too. So that took a lot of time to build up those connections, but eventually people started referring me clients. But then what I ended up doing is I kind of just sat down and I just said, hey, look, this is taking a very long time to get clients. Like, what's the better way to get clients? And then so what I realized is if I look at all these larger property managers out there, like Picasa, Evolve, Turnkey, AvantStay, all these different managers out there, they spend a lot of money on marketing each year. Picasa spent $7.5 million on postcards alone last year, not to take into account
Wow.
like ads or anything like that. And majority of these owners, they're in pain. They have bad reviews because when you scale so quickly as a large corporation, you don't have your systems in place. The quality of the work that you provide pretty much goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So I just said to myself, well, why don't I just target these people? They're not happy. They're already paying somebody 20%. I don't have to convince them to pay me 20% when they're already paying somebody 20%, and their property's already live. So I don't have to wait for someone to buy a property, furnish a property. I can pretty much sign a contract and I can have their property live with a new listing in 7 days. So that was my whole strategy. And then I just had to figure out, like, how do I get a hold of these people now? Right?
Mm.
How do I get a
Yeah.
hold of these people to do that? Because on these listings, direct booking sites and Airbnb, nobody shows the address, so you can't skip trace.
Yeah.
So I had to find somebody that could build a software to be able to extract the locations on the back end of their websites. So they developed the software that pulls all the locations. And then I go through a verification process. Then I skip trace it. Then I input all that information into a CRM to keep track of all my leads, like where they are in the sales cycle, initial call, sales call, negotiation call, onboarding call, and just treating it as an actual business. And then just going through them, prospecting, phone calls, text messages, emails, and just asking them how their current experience is going, if they're happy, if they're not, figuring out their pain points, and then booking them on a sales call.
Wow. That's interesting. And it makes so much sense because I've seen the exact same thing with Vacasa and Evolve. Like you always see like 4.6 star ratings and,
Yeah.
angry guests who say, oh, they didn't respond to me and had this maintenance issue and stuff like that. So it totally makes sense. Are there specific properties that you were targeting? Like, are there ones that if you're going to get into co-host or management, you want to avoid certain properties and target other properties?
Yeah. So like for me, because I was focusing on West Palm, is I only want to focus on the properties that were bringing in the most income because I'm paid on a percentage basis. So properties that would do 100, 120,000 or more down here were 4-bedroom pool houses.
Mm.
So whenever I would pull this data, I would just pull those types of homes and just target those because it's the same amount of work to do a 40,000 versus 120,000. Same exact work. People just don't understand that. Same amount of work to close a client too. Same amount of work to manage the client. So I would focus on those.
Got it. Okay. And what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make as they're getting into co-hosting? Are there certain things that you see over and over again that you're like, oh man, you need to avoid these things, or I learned that the hard way?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because so many people want to get into co-hosting and they hear all these different strategies to make more income on YouTube videos, Facebook groups, things like that. And the strategies that they hear are when you actually already have a foundation, a track record, and have like 5 to 10 clients under management. Then you can implement those. But in the beginning, when you're closing your first few clients, is you want to cause the least amount of friction as possible to get these people to sign with you. So no technology fee, no year-long contracts. So pretty much what I do is if I was starting my business again, I wanted to sign my first contract. I would tell them, hey, look, we sign a year contract, but I give you the ability to leave within 60 days if you want to. If you're not happy, you can leave within 60 days. Just let me know, and then you're good. And I do the year-long contract just so I don't have to keep sending you a contract every 60 days. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. I understand. And then I also say, but we're going to do a 30-day test period as well to see if you like working with me, if I like working with you. And then after the 30 days, we'll go back and review that together. Because you don't want to work with HMOs, high maintenance owners, because you have one HMO and you have 10 clients, that one HMO would take up 80% of your time. So it gives you the ability to fill somebody out first before you go into a year-long contract with them, and then you can just cancel within those 30 days. But in the beginning, take on that HMO just so you can have like a client or two. And then after say 60 days or whatever you want to do, then you can cut them off. But you can use them to build your credibility when you're talking to more clients. Like, hey, look, I'm working with this client right here. This is their property. And then you sign another client. And then after you get 2 more clients, you cut off that HMO, whatever it is, but don't keep on with that HMO.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's with a lot of businesses where you can see that, the clients, and a lot of times like it's clients that are like the least profitable clients. They're the most demanding. We noticed with our bookings, even, in the summertime in our peak season when we're charging up to $1,000 a night in some cases, those clients or those guests you never even hear from. But then in the off season when we marked it down to $99 a night, those are the most difficult clients that cause damage, and it's really interesting how that works. But that's great advice. And then when it comes to your team, what does that look? I know you mentioned in the beginning you can start off with you doing pretty much everything, but as it grew, what type of team members did you add, and what's the division of responsibility?
Yeah, so I like to do things as efficient and costly as possible. So your cleaner is if you can find a rock star cleaner that actually specializes in short-term rentals and they have cleaners underneath them, she can pretty much cross-reference as your quality control person. So she has her cleaners clean it, and then she goes in and checks after it. And then it takes away you having to hire somebody to do that as well from an operations standpoint. So finding a cleaner first. Second thing is like finding a runner / handyman and paying them on like a per run basis instead of hiring somebody full on. So for example, if I had something that needed to happen, it's usually somebody who's retired, maybe in their 60s. pay them $75 every time something happens. They can go over there, fix it, or something needs to be replaced. They can go over there and replace it, whatever that is. The next thing I would recommend having is a operations / onboarding manager, because onboarding takes a lot of time usually. So operations manager can do all your onboarding for you, do some guest communication, client relations, things like that. And then the next hire I would do is like an actual guest communication VA. They can be, as long as you have your good SOPs and tracking things in Notion or Google Sheets, they can be overseas. Pay them $900 a month, and they can usually handle about 30 listings or so for communication. And then the last hire I would recommend doing is a revenue manager, because people aren't happy when they're not making enough money. So you kind of want to have somebody in Price Labs at least 3 to 4 times a week doing that. So I found I didn't hire somebody, I found somebody that does revenue management. And then when I gave them my listings, he gave me a significant discount. So then it took away from my time to actually manage people's Price Labs for them. And then I knew if they're doing it constantly every single week, they're probably most likely going to make more money than myself managing it for them. Right. So those are probably the hires that I would recommend as you begin to scale in that order.
Yeah. Yeah. So revenue manager, so full time, that's what they do, is just analyze markets, analyze supply and demand, and understand how to price your properties.
Exactly. So like they'll look at the threshold for the market. So you can go like 7 days, you can do 14 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months out. And then you'll show like if you're in the green, if you're above the market standard, if you're in the yellow, you're in the market standard, red, if you're below the market standard. And then they just adjust accordingly, try to fill orphan days as well, just to make the most money as possible. So that's all that they do. So they manage so many people's listings, and they just focus on revenue management as a whole.
That's interesting. Wow. Very cool. And you said that your VA, the guest relations VA, could handle about 30 listings. How does that work in terms of their time? Because, obviously people are messaging from probably 7 a.m. to late in the evening. How did you structure their time frame to be able to manage the responses and guest communication?
Yeah, so I'd usually have it like they start somewhere around like 8 a.m. through potentially 11 p.m., 10 p.m. around there. And then we didn't have somebody covering the night shift at that time. So we kind of did it that. And like worst case scenario is somebody gets locked out. So we had a lockbox on the premises. And then with our check-in instructions, we have the lockbox code. So they can see that too if they get locked out. But majority of the time, not really covering messages over the night period of time. Yeah. And it's not like they're constantly getting hit by messages all throughout the day. It's just sporadically throughout the day. So
yeah. Cool. So it was a couple people then that would trade off then throughout the day, or just one person?
Just one person.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, just one person.
Some long shifts.
Yeah.
But I guess, like you said, it's not full time where you have to be on the whole time and answering questions. It's just when they come in. So when it comes to the sale of your property, or I'm sorry, the sale of your business, then I was curious about that. Did you start with the thought process in mind? I want to build this and scale it up to, 35 deals or 35 properties and then sell it? Or did that just come as a side benefit as you're building this business?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just, it was never really my goal to build a property management company. My main goal was just like, how do I get more cash coming in so I can use that money to potentially buy other properties in the future? So that was kind of my whole idea, my whole thought process. And then eventually, I had a couple of friends that were talking about buying management companies, and just ended up having somebody reach out and then talk to me, see if I was interested in selling. And the numbers just ended up working out. Just kind of made sense. But like my whole thing is just like, whenever I start something, I never want to stay in that same situation or that same company, that same business. I want to eventually trade up to something bigger, right? Same thing in investing in real estate. Like start with maybe a single family home, then go to small multifamily, then 1031 exchange to something larger. So that was my whole thought process, right? Use that money to eventually buy a bigger business in the future.
Yeah. That's That's really smart. And so for others who might want to start a management company and eventually sell it, how does a management company get valued? How do you know what you could expect in the future if you're putting in all this work?
Yeah, that's a really good question because a lot of people don't really understand. They see the amount of income that they could potentially make from a cash flow standpoint per month, charging 20%. Right. So your property does $120,000 a year. You charge 20%, making $2,000 per month. Or if it's $60,000 a year in gross revenue, make $1,000 per month. But what they don't see is the value of the actual contracts. Now, when you're a smaller player, maybe like 20 to 30, it's usually 1 to 2 times the amount of income that the contract brings in a year. So, say for example, the contract brought in $24,000 a year, right? So that contract is valued between 1 to 2 times that valuation whenever you exit and sell that contract.
Mm,
Now, if people are smart when they're buying management companies, is they'll put a thing in the actual contract that says, "Hey, look, we'll give you half of it now. We'll give you half of the valuation now, and then whatever's left after that year, then we'll give you the remaining half based on how many clients actually stay on
mm,
and how much income they potentially bring in as well." So that's usually the structure. So you're bringing in $24,000 a year in income, 1 to 2 times, depending on how well you negotiate and what type of properties you have under your management and how close they are in management too. Like if you have some in West Palm Beach, then you have some in Kansas City, 2 different markets as well. Your systems probably aren't as dialed in because they're not in one location too. The valuation is probably going to be closer to one.
got it. Okay,
Mhm.
that makes sense. And did you stay on then and help with the management afterwards, or how? Because I imagine you were probably not fully extricated from the business. Like some of it depended on you, I would think, right? Or maybe you were, but what did that look like once it was handed over to the new owners?
Yeah, so pretty much communication with the clients saying, "Hey, look, like I'll still be here if you have questions," just to make sure they don't want to leave, right?
Yeah,
Because when you feel like somebody's like giving you away,
yeah,
selling you away, you kind of want to shop elsewhere. But if you explain the conversation with them that, "Hey, look, you'll still be involved to a certain extent," they're more likely to stay. So that was kind of the situation. Like maybe randomly I would get phone calls, but most of the time I didn't.